They stole my ranch. The gavel slammed down on that Tuesday morning with a sound sharp enough to cut through the low murmur of the courthouse crowd. 3,500 acres, $8 million of Harrington blood, sweat, and legacy, sold for $50,000 flat to the brother-in-law of the HOA president. My name is Jack Harrington. I'm 59 years old, a retired property law attorney who spent 4 decades in courtrooms dismantling exactly the kind of schemes that just took everything my family had built since 1954. Yesterday, those self-important tyrants auctioned off the Double H Ranch for less than a new heavy-duty pickup, all over fabricated emergency assessments that never existed. I found the foreclosure notice nailed to my front gate at dawn, frost still thick on the ground, the old diesel tractor coughing blue smoke while the cattle bawled for morning feed. The paper flapped in the wind like some Old West wanted poster. My grandfather Tom's calloused hands had carved this place out of sagebrush and pure stubbornness. My father had doubled the herd and modernized the operation. I grew up here, learned to rope and ride before I could drive legally. My late wife Laura and I raised our kids here. And now some clipboard-wielding suburbanites thought they could erase all of that with a forged lien and a rigged auction. You mess with a man who's spent his life eating crooked organizations for breakfast, you've declared war on the wrong bloodline. By sundown, I had papers drafted that would have deputy sheriffs taping eviction notices to every beige stucco door in Sunrise Valley estates. Justice, I've learned, is best served deliberate and ice-cold. 3 months earlier, I was just a grieving widower trying to outrun loneliness on the only ground that ever felt like home. Today, I was about to teach an entire homeowners association why you never come after a lawyer's heritage. The Double H has been Harrington land since 1954, when Grandpa Tom paid cash for those 3,500 acres of raw high desert scrub, what would barely buy a decent sedan these days. He had Depression-era grit in his bones. Spent 20 hard years stringing barbed wire, digging wells by hand, coaxing grass out of dust until the place could run 1,000 head comfortably. My father inherited it in '79, built the steel barns you still see standing today, installed the center pivot irrigation that turned marginal ground into solid winter pasture. I grew up in the saddle, breaking colts on those back ridges, learning early that land doesn't give anything away free. Laura and I met at the county fair in '89. She was judging 4-H steers and told me my prize Hereford had kind eyes. Should have been my first warning, she'd soften me up for good. We built a life here. Our daughter Sarah clerked for a federal judge and made partner at a big Seattle firm. Our son Ben followed his own path into the Marines. Last I heard, he was somewhere in the Pacific Theater doing things he doesn't talk about on satellite calls. Laura and I always planned to retire fully here, maybe put up a few guest cabins, watch grandkids scatter hay to bottle calves, and learn what real work smells like. Cancer took her fast last spring. Suddenly, I was rattling around a 5-bedroom ranch house that echoed too much. I sold my downtown practice, loaded the dogs into the truck, and came home for good. Thought the routine of feeding cattle and fixing fence would patch the hole she left. It helped some. The mornings were still beautiful, the evenings quiet enough to hear coyotes on the far hills. Then came Sunrise Valley Estates. In 2020, a California developer discovered our little valley had views and potential. Overnight, my eastern boundary, 2 full miles of prime winter graze, got carved into half-acre lots priced at $300,000 and up. Big 2-story stucco houses went up fast, all beige walls and red clay tile roofs, looking like they'd been transplanted from some Phoenix golf community. Swimming pools glittered where my cattle used to bed down. The air filled with the constant whine of landscaping blowers instead of meadowlarks. I've got nothing against honest progress. I've represented plenty of developers in my career. But these weren't local families putting down roots. These were retirees who'd cashed out California or Seattle equity and wanted the postcard version of rural life without any of the reality. And the woman who appointed herself queen of the new order was Elaine Whitaker. I first met her on a crisp October morning when she marched up my driveway in a white linen pantsuit, clipboard clutched like a battle standard. Blonde hair pulled back tight, nails painted stop sign red, smile polished to a high gloss that never touched her eyes. "Mr. Harrington," she said, "I'm Elaine Whitaker, president of the Sunrise Valley Homeowners Association. We need to discuss bringing your property into compliance with community standards. Compliance. Like 70 years of Harrington ownership was some clerical error she could correct with a few forms. She smelled of expensive department store perfume laid over something colder. Control. She'd made her money in pharmaceutical sales, convincing doctors to prescribe whatever new pill paid the biggest kickback. Now she'd found fresh prey, neighbors who didn't know how to fight back. Your ranch appears to fall within our covenants due to recent county boundary adjustments, she continued, tapping that clipboard. We'll expect immediate cooperation. I stood there in dusty boots and a barn coat that still carried the scent of hay, listening to the cattle moving toward the feed ground and the old '68 Ford tractor warming up behind the barn. Sounds that had started every single day on this place since before most of these houses were even dreamed of. Ma'am, I said, keeping my voice courtroom calm. This ranch predates your subdivision by a long shot. I think you've got the wrong address. Her smile thinned. I don't make mistakes, Mr. Harrington. Famous last words. Within days, the certified letters started piling up. Notice of violation. Unauthorized commercial vehicle, Grandpa's faded blue tractor. Notice of violation. Excessive noise. Roosters announcing sunrise at the same hour they had for decades. Notice of violation. Unsightly storage of agricultural materials. Neatly stacked hay bales waiting to feed my herd through winter. Each carried the threat of $500 daily fines until corrected. I started a thick file folder labeled HOA harassment. 40 years of practice taught me tyrants count on decent people not keeping records. Elaine escalated quickly. She and various board members began slow-drive patrols along my fence line twice a day, pointing, photographing my stock tanks, my irrigation ditches, my cattle doing what cattle do. The crunch of their luxury SUVs on my gravel became a daily reminder I was under siege. She worked the old-time neighbors too, knocking on doors with glossy pamphlets about preserving property values and modernizing agricultural nuisances. Most lifelong ranchers told her where to shove it. But she found traction with a few newcomers who'd bought 5-acre ranchettes, thinking they wanted country charm until they discovered it came with smells and sounds. The real gut punch came at an emergency HOA meeting I wasn't invited to. My old friend Ray Caldwell, who runs the section south of me, called that night barely containing laughter. Jack, they voted a $45,000 special assessment against you. Road damage from your trucks, stormwater runoff, even a fund for noise mitigation because of your roosters. $45,000 pulled out of thin air. The roads they claimed I'd damaged? My grandfather had graded half of them with his own dozer when the county still thought this valley was too remote to bother with. My water rights were senior to every house in their subdivision by 50 years. Ray said they were waving around county approval papers showing my ranch now fell inside their boundaries. That's when the lawyer in me smelled serious fraud. I showed up uninvited to their next regular meeting with original surveys, patents, and chain of title documents spread across their folding table like evidence in a murder trial. The room smelled of burnt coffee and tension. Ladies and gentlemen, I said in my best courtroom voice, I'd like to see the legal instrument that places property deeded in 1954 under covenants written in 2020. Elaine's face drained of color. She shuffled papers, muttered about public records, but produced nothing. Silence in a room full of people is a powerful admission. Instead of backing down, she doubled down. Hired a high-dollar firm downtown to send cease and desist letters claiming ongoing livestock trespass and threatening massive penalties. I walked every foot of fence, post solid, wire-tight. Then came the sabotage. I woke one pre-dawn to truck doors slamming and cattle bawling in panic. 3 sections of fence cut clean with bolt cutters, professional work. By sunrise, my herd was scattered across their manicured common areas. Elaine had news crews and deputies on site before I'd finished temporary repairs, talking to cameras about reckless agricultural practices endangering children. That afternoon, a scared 16-year-old kid, nephew of Elaine's brother-in-law Paul Whitaker, slouched up my driveway. Took 20 minutes and a cup of coffee before he spilled. Elaine paid him $500 cash to create openings, so the cattle problem would solve itself. Kid was terrified of charges. I offered him a deal my grandfather would have approved. Tell your father everything, or I let the sheriff handle felony vandalism. By evening, Paul was on my porch looking 10 years older, son beside him, promising to talk sense into Elaine. But I already knew sense wasn't part of her playbook. The foreclosure notice arrived a week later. Big red letters declaring intent to sell the entire ranch for the bogus lien in 30 days. I sat on the porch that night watching storm clouds stack up over the mountains, reading legal papers that turned strong coffee bitter. The process was technically allowed if the lien was valid. But every step reeked of fraud. No proper notice, no hearing, no verifiable debt. While Elaine ran her PR campaign, community meetings painting me as a public health menace, local TV eating up her, helping an aging rancher transition narrative, I went nocturnal with research. What I found chilled me worse than any winter wind. Original 2020 HOA covenants explicitly excluded the double H. Someone had filed an amended boundary map 6 months ago with a surveyor's seal, except the surveyor, Harold Jenkins, had been dead 2 years. Forgery plain and simple. Deeper, the HOA itself owed over $300,000 in back property taxes while claiming nonprofit status to the IRS and running obvious for-profit development schemes through shell companies. 3 other longtime landowners had lost parcels the same way, foreclosed for phantom assessments, deeds flipped to bored relatives for 7-figure profits. This wasn't petty control freak behavior. This was organized crime wearing khakis and holding potluck socials. I called in reinforcements. Sarah flew down from Seattle, took one look at the evidence, and said, "Dad, this is federal racketeering. We're going to bury them." My old law partner Harlan, legend for dismantling corrupt HOAs, laughed like a kid on Christmas when I briefed him. Dead surveyor signature? Mail fraud, conspiracy, RICO. They're done. My brother-in-law Mike, retired detective turned private investigator, started digging financials. County title expert Ruth Bennett, who'd watched these foreclosures with growing suspicion, volunteered her records and expertise. My kitchen became war room central, coffee brewing around the clock, printers running hot, whiteboards tracking shell companies, and forged filings. Mike hit gold first, recordings from a directional mic at the coffee shop where the board met. Elaine's voice clear as day discussing $10,000 bribes to a county commissioner for zoning variances, plans to reclassify remaining ranches as blighted for quick seizure, and a Phoenix investor group ready to pay $40 million for a clean 12,000-acre development package. The scope hit me like a physical blow. My ranch wasn't personal spite. It was the crown jewel in a criminal land grab targeting every old family spread left in the county. While they plotted, we built the perfect counterweapon. State conservation law allows bona fide agricultural operators to form preservation districts with eminent domain authority to protect rural character. Valuation? Current agricultural use, roughly $1,200 an acre. Those half-acre McMansion lots Elaine's members had paid $300,000 for, worth about $600 each under AG preservation rules. Legal, ironclad, and beautifully symmetric. Elaine sensed the tide turning. Went full scorched earth. Anonymous complaints triggering Dawn Health Department raids. Bogus contractor liens filed against my equipment and even livestock. A bar association ethics complaint trying to get me disciplined for unauthorized practice when I defended my own land. Every move bought her time and cost me money. Classic playbook. Then came her masterpiece. A packed community safety summit at the high school gym. Banners, catered snacks, coached residents ready to testify how my cattle were destroying their quality of life. Local TV ate it up. County commissioners promised swift action. I let her have her moment. The real reckoning came at the next commissioners' meeting. Elaine strode in confident, white blazer gleaming, board flanking her like loyal lieutenants. She delivered her polished presentation, charts, experts, tearful residents. When she finished, I stood. Commissioners, before you act, I'd like public comment on an active federal criminal conspiracy operating under color of HOA authority. The room froze. I laid out the forgeries, played Mike's recordings of Elaine discussing bribes, showed the dead surveyor's signature, detailed the tax fraud and self-dealing. Then the hammer. Effective this morning, the Harrington Agricultural Preservation District has been recorded and approved. Pursuant to state statute, I am exercising eminent domain authority over every parcel in Sunrise Valley Estates for permanent agricultural conservation. Fair market value has been appraised at current agricultural use, $600 per improved half-acre lot. Elaine shot up screaming about theft and conspiracy. Deputies moved in. Federal agents waiting in the hallway took her into custody on the spot. Paul and 2 other board members followed in cuffs before the meeting adjourned. 3 years federal prison for Elaine, plus $500,000 restitution. Paul got 18 months and lost his contractor license forever. Shell companies dissolved, assets seized. Every Sunrise Valley house was acquired at the appraised $600. Most owners took the checks and left quietly, relieved to escape coming depositions. A few fought, none won. Agricultural preservation districts have rock-solid statutory protection when properly formed. I could have kept it all. Instead, I formed the Harrington Land Trust with settlement proceeds from the county for enabling the fraud. We provide free legal defense nationwide to families targeted by corrupt HOAs. 68 properties recovered so far and counting. The former subdivision commons became educational pastures. School groups come out to learn calving, fencing, water conservation. Kids' laughter now drifts across ground that almost became another sterile development. Sarah opened a satellite office here, specializing in property rights defense. Ben teaches veteran transition programs when he rotates home, roping lessons, stockmanship, the kind of useful skills the military doesn't always cover. The legislature passed the Harrington Act, mandatory independent audits for large assessments, criminal penalties for forged filings, stricter conflict of interest rules. 3 neighboring counties formed their own preservation districts using our template. Grandpa Tom's legacy didn't end. It grew roots deeper than ever. Sometimes the worst loss in life strips away fear and leaves only clarity. Bullies count on good people choosing peace over justice. But when everything that matters has already been threatened, you find you've got nothing left to lose and everything to fight for, not just for yourself, but for every family coming after you. So tell me in the comments, have you ever faced real injustice that forced you to decide whether to fight back hard or walk away? Where do you personally draw the line? Turn the other cheek no matter what, or push back with everything you've got when someone tries to take what's yours? Share your stories, your limits, your victories, or regrets. Let's talk about it, because these choices define us more than almost anything else in life.